Hi, everyone, and welcome back to the Bitch in My Brain podcast. My name is Josie, and I am very happy to be with you this week because I was not able to be with you last week. Unfortunately, I was visited by my dear friend, Epilepsy, and she decided to give me the gift of a seizure. So it has definitely been an interesting week leading up to today. This seizure was a little bit different than my other ones, more so on like a mental, emotional, spiritual level. I'm very familiar with the physical effects of a seizure. I am used to it. It's almost like I'm trained in the ability to recover physically. So that really is no big deal for me. Although physically it is very intense. You know, you're seizing, shaking, flexing every single muscle for 45 seconds to a minute. There are times that you can have a seizure longer than that. Those are the sketchy ones. So we try to avoid those ones. But yeah, it's just very, very taxing with how much energy you're expending. And once I come out of a seizure, it's like an instant migraine. I'm throwing up. And then I have to get into bed. And I sleep. So this last one, I slept for 16 hours straight. It was, there was a lot of rest involved. And one of the things that actually sucks the most is you bite the shit out of your tongue. So lucky me, I definitely did. And so if there are any words or sentences that make my tongue scrape the back of my teeth, just know that the reason I'm saying it that way or avoiding saying it that way is because I'm trying to keep my teeth from scraping my tongue. The bright side of this seizure physically was I didn't fuck up my shoulder. All my previous seizures, I've always dislocated it. It gets like caught behind my back. And a few years ago, I finally had shoulder surgery because I basically have had a non-existent shoulder. There was nothing left because I probably dislocated it hundreds of times. I'm not even kidding you. I'm not exaggerating. It was ridiculous. So the shoulder is good. And I don't have health insurance, people. So that is very, very crucial that my shoulder was good. So physically, like I said, it all worked out. We are recovered for the most part. But it really was, the emotional, mental, and spiritual aspect of it that I'm really feeling. I don't know if pain is the best word. Maybe sadness is more so what I'm trying to say. I feel as though this one took a little bit of my spirit with it. I have been, seizure-free for 2 years and worked very hard for that. So to have, a big hiccup in between that, it kills your spirit. It kind of takes away that momentum and makes you question a lot of shit. So that's been my last week, and I thought, let's have a little fun with it. And, I'll have some fun with it. Hopefully you guys have some fun with it too. But I kind of want to take you through my epilepsy journey from start to finish. It has been a wild ride and has had a huge impact on the reason why I'm where I am today. So I want to kind of talk about that. I also want to take you through my non-negotiables when it comes to self-care and how I've implemented routines to make sure I'm taking care of my mind, my body, my soul, so I don't have seizures. This one was a random one. We'll see, what I can uncover from it. But after implementing these self-care routines, I have felt a difference in my life. So let's jump in right to where it all began. So I was first diagnosed with epilepsy in 6th grade. I had officially had my first grand mal seizure. And just to keep you up on the lingo, so a grand mal seizure is like the classic one you think of where, you're convulsing and you're unconscious, you pass out, all of that one, the big scary ones. And those are the ones that last, 45 seconds, hopefully to a minute. That's kind of the sweet spot. Anything longer is a little more scary. And then you have petit mal seizures, which I like to describe as it feels like a glitch in the Matrix. That sounds crazy, but imagine it's like your eyes roll into the back of your head, and then 2 seconds later, you snap back into reality. It's a really trippy feeling. So those are the two types of seizures that I will be, referring to throughout the episode. So all I remember from my first seizure is I was in the library working on a computer, and then next thing you know, I'm laying on the ground and there's all of these adults, my teacher, the librarian, the gym teacher was there, and they were all just staring down at me. And I remember being terrified because I thought I had fallen asleep in music class. And our music teacher wasn't the nicest, so it was a genuine fear. And so when I tried to get up, everyone's like, oh my God, no, no, no. And that's when I realized oh, this is, I guess, kind of intense. And so, I went to the hospital, and from there, I started having doctor's appointments and neurology appointments. And was officially diagnosed with epilepsy at that time. And it wasn't really a big deal in the family because my mom was already familiar with epilepsy. She had a brother growing up, so my uncle, who had epilepsy. So she was kind of familiar with what it looked like and, what seizures can be. So there wasn't a lot of worry, which I think was helpful for me, but there were definitely some aspects of epilepsy that had a pretty big impact on, my childhood. I remember there was an aspect of kind of my independence that was taken away from me in certain aspects. I mean, I wasn't locked in a box or anything, but the people around me were very, very protective of me and making sure that any of my triggers, wouldn't be around. So a trigger for me, I have multiple. Growing up, it was more so strobe lights, so very visually, overwhelming stuff. Sleep deprivation is another one. So I am not the kind of person that can survive off of 4 hours of sleep. It's not in anyone's best interest. Another one is stress. That's a huge one, very impactful. We got hyperventilation in there. And then my favorite, and this is completely sarcasm, is hangovers. So a lot of people were very much zeroed in on making sure that there were no triggers around when I was around. So even I remember going into a haunted house. I actually grew up with a haunted house right behind me. And there was a room in there with, a sketchy clown, and they had strobe lights going. And I remember my friends just being like, almost like jumping on me and closing my eyes. And at that point, we were going with some of the cute guys that we liked. So to be like mauled and just like the biggest worry when you're trying to, be cool and impress a guy, it definitely, made me a little bit embarrassed. And I know I shouldn't have been, but it did. And so in a way, I was really resistant to kind of embracing the fact that I had epilepsy. I really didn't want to accept that I was different and that my life needed to be operated on a different level. And I was really anti taking my meds to the point where I would hide them in the corners of my room. I'd tuck them, under or into the carpet. I'd hide them in my mattress. And then it reached a point where, my parents were like watching me take them. And I, would flip my tongue a certain way, hide it tucked down into my gums. And then the moment they weren't looking, I'd spit it out. So I was very much anti-meds. And I was like that for a very long time. And I think a part of that was the doctors were more so, even though I was the patient, they were more so communicating with my parents. And then my parents, sorry, mom and dad, were not good at relaying the information. So all I really knew was I have to take these meds. I've got no idea what they do, but apparently they make my brain work. However, I knew all about the side effects. So I was like, I'm not taking these meds if they make me, break out in hives or have mood swings. So I'm like, fuck the medicine altogether, no, I'm not doing it. And then I got into high school, and that is when kind of everything changed around my epilepsy. In high school, I was a partying girl and was, drinking and doing extracurricular activities every weekend. And I was just very ignorant at that time of what, drugs and alcohol do to my brain and to my body. But like I said, I really could give two shits at that time. I was like, no, I'm chilling with my friends, making memories. Like, I fuck my brain. I'm living in the moment. Screw you. All of that. And I have one seizure story that really sticks out to me in high school. It's pretty funny. I can come to laugh at it now. I don't know if this girl can come to laugh at it, but with epilepsy, we roll with the punches, we roll with the seizures, and yeah, we look back and can hopefully laugh. So it was my senior year of high school, and I had a really good friend who had never tried acid before. And at that point, I was an unapologetic druggy girl down for, whatever. So I told her, I'm like, hey, come do it with me. We'll have a great time. We'll go down to the creek. You're safe with me. Let's have a good time. And so we pick up some acid and we go down to the creek. And so we take the first tab. We wait like 30, 45 minutes, nothing's happening. And so we decide to take the second tab, which was completely unnecessary and dumb as fuck. But we were 17, we were there for a good time, it's just, that was the decision making. And about 15 minutes later is when it all started to kick in. And we were like hiking up this like mini trail because we bought paint stuff as well. So the vibes were good. We were like, this is going to be the best day ever. And I remember visually things being very like overwhelming, the clouds were moving, the flowers were dancing, all of that. And I remember thinking to myself, like, ooh, this is kind of overwhelming. And then next thing you know, I wake up in my friend's lap. She's bawling her eyes out. And I'm like, what the hell happened? What's going on? And she's like, you just had a seizure. Like, I've never seen anything like that. And seizures are sketchy sober. So tripping acid, I can't imagine how awful that was. But she ended up calling my friend / honestly sister who lived with us at the time to come pick us up from Golden. And sure enough, right when we were pulling into my driveway, so was my mom. And she had known that I had a seizure, but she didn't know why. And so we get into the house, and unfortunately, I had fallen into a cactus. So I had needles in my hands, on my wrists, in my back, in my butt. They were everywhere. And so my mom grabs the tweezers and, she starts taking them out. And I'm laying face down, and she's like, Joe's, were you drinking or, were you smoking? And she wasn't mad or anything. She was just like genuinely curious. And I remember looking at her, like turning my head and being like, I'm tripping acid. Like, what? I almost thought she was like dumb. I'm like, what don't you get, And of course, she was like totally thrown off. I don't think she was expecting me to say that at all. And, she's still got the tweezers, and the pressure she applied was definitely a little bit more aggressive once she knew that information. But luckily, I had Darby who swooped me up, brought me downstairs, and I literally laid in my bed, wrapped in a comforter for like 6 hours, and me and my dad just talked about life. So it's actually one of my favorite memories because, well, it's just a crazy story. And that was a good bonding time between me and my dad. I love talking about life with my dad. So I think that's why I look back at that one and I can giggle, all of that. And I also think it's because I've had seizures way worse than that with worse consequences. As much as I hate to admit it, I have totaled 2 cars from having a seizure while driving. The first one, I think, was my sophomore year of college. I had just gotten dinner with my dad, and I was headed back up to Boulder. And then the next thing you know, or I know, or remember rather, I'm sitting at a stoplight back in my hometown, so where my parents lived. And I remember I just kept repeating to myself, just get home. You're about to have a seizure. Like, just get home and you're good. Just get home. Just on repeat. So I drive all the way back to my parents' house. I walk in and my dad's like, what are you doing back? And I just told him, I said, I'm kind of feeling weird. I feel like I might have a seizure. And he's like, okay, lay down. Let's get you settled. And then the moment I kind of turned my face, that was when my dad jumped out of bed because I had black and blue bruising already on the side of my face. So he runs outside and we look at my car and pretty much everything except the driver's seat is mashed up and just scraped. My poor baby Jetta, she was an icon, didn't make it. We'll, we'll say that. And so I then wasn't allowed to drive for a little bit. And then I finally got another car. So we were, back in action. And it was my senior year of college. And I worked multiple jobs in college. Honestly, it was insane. I was like a nanny. I helped this real estate agent. I managed Airbnbs. I was doing a lot all at once. And that day, I remember being at the real estate agent's house, and I kept getting the petite seizures. And at that time, even now, I call them whiffs. So it's basically like a glitch, like I kind of said at the beginning. However, I didn't really flag them because I had had petites before and not had a grand mal seizure. So I kind of ignored them, a little bit of ignorance. So I get in the car, I'm driving back into Boulder. And the next thing I remember is looking over, and a giant tree branch is through my windshield. So I guess what happened was I was stopped at the stoplight, began having a seizure. So, my foot was off the brake, or, well, in a way it's off the brake, but luckily it wasn't on the gas. And so I just began kind of rolling forward, and I sideswiped the two cars that were coming the other direction. I went down a hill, through a fence, into this person's yard, and that's when the branch came through my windshield. And luckily, it actually stopped me by probably 2 inches from running into their brick house. So that one was a huge reality check of, like, I could have killed someone. I could have killed myself. I mean, if that tree branch was 6 inches over, I might not have a freaking eye. So after that, my parents were like, absolutely no car. Like, you're not driving. I really had to lean on my friends. But I felt like it was meant to happen because I almost needed something huge like that to really, kick myself into gear. Like, I needed to make changes in my life, or who knows what will happen, the next seizure. But, when I think at the time I had to have been, 20? And in college, you care, but I kind of didn't care. I was just like, okay, I need to get better about taking my meds, and, I'll try not to be super stressed out. Maybe I'll quit a job. But, the drinking and drugs, I was not willing to give those up at the time. So even after totaling 2 cars, I had some other sketchy seizures in between that. One time I had 3 in one day, which is not good. You can thank margaritas for that. I don't know if I drank a margarita again after that. So, learned a little bit of a lesson with that seizure. But ultimately, I wasn't really willing to change my lifestyle. I was still drinking every weekend. I was still, doing drugs consistently, staying up late. Like, I really, at that point in age and maturity level, like, I didn't really give a fuck. But then I went 2 years seizure-free from 2020 to 2022, which was the longest I've ever gone, I think, or had ever gone at that time. So I definitely was feeling, some wind in my sails. I had this, confidence, and totally thought I had, shit under control. And this was right around the time I had started my life coaching program with the client I was working with. And, I had a little bit of a rock bottom moment that pushed me to stop drinking for a few months. And then fall 2022, specifically on my dad's birthday, or the night before rather, I had a good childhood family friend reach out to do a wine tasting with our moms, and I love them. So I was very excited, but I went back and forth, like, do I drink? Do I not drink? What do I do? And in my fashion, I, justified why it would be a good time for me to drink. And, I told myself I'm only going to take sips. And, afterwards I'll go home. There's no way, I'll buy drugs. So let's drink. It was kind of like a hall pass. Well, it didn't stop at the wine tasting because we went to the next place and then there was vodka sodas involved. And then we went to the next place and we were taking shots of whiskey. And then we went back to their apartment and I was drinking wine. It was an absolute mess. And I woke up the next morning violently hungover, probably one of the worst I've ever had. Like the ones where you're horizontal, eye mask, you've got ice across your forehead and you're drinking bone broth, that kind of bad. But it was my dad's birthday and we were supposed to go to Topgolf. A bunch of his friends were going as well. My mom rented the bays. It was kind of a big ordeal. And I knew I couldn't cancel because I was hungover. I'd done it way too many times that at this point I was like, this is terrible if I cancel because I'm hungover. So I rallied and, I got up and I was having whiffs at that time, but I was kind of like, just push through, you're going to be fine. And so we drive there and I swear the moment I walk in, my body goes into full panic mode. I've never had a panic attack like that in my life, but I knew I was going to have one. I knew I was going to have one in Topgolf in front of everyone. So I was freaking out and I was like begging my brain, please, please, please do not have one here. And I was finally able to communicate with my parents, like, I need to leave. And so they walked me out and pretty much right when I got in the car, I ended up having a seizure. And that one was very tough for me because, at the time I had been 2 years seizure free, but it was also frustrating because I knew it was because I was hungover and I knew it was because I was being irresponsible and all of that stuff. So that was really when I had almost a come to Jesus with myself of like, you're treating yourself like shit. You're doing things to sabotage yourself, your health, your spirit. So we've got to figure our shit out and we've got to start caring, for ourselves. And that was, when I really started on my sobriety journey. But I also really focused on implementing self-care routines into my daily life so that I could begin to, nourish my body and nurture my body back to health. So I really wanted to implement a routine for my mind, my body, and my soul. And so in order to take care of my body, I go to yoga pretty much every morning. I'm flexible on Sundays and Mondays because I don't want to run myself into the ground. I want to still enjoy it. But it's very important for me to do yoga because not only am I moving my body and, helping with blood flow and all of that, it's also a way that I can connect with my mind. So it's kind of like a 2-for-1, and that's what I love, about yoga. Another huge one, but a small, small one to implement was taking my meds. I know that that might not seem like an obvious, self-care routine, but it 100% is. Because consistently taking my meds is caring for myself. It's caring for my brain. It's making sure that I have a strong foundation so my body can function the best. There's no shame in the meds game. My next self-care practice is meditation. And that is because it connects me on a emotional and spiritual level. I try to spend even just 5 minutes meditating in my meditation room to kind of just recenter me and, get in alignment. And if I can't do that, then, I'll take some deep breaths in the shower or just find a really calm place to drink my tea. I don't make it this huge ordeal, and I try to find ways that I can still have it be a part of my routine without making it this big ordeal, making this huge action step that is easy to fall, off of. So I like to keep, my meditations really simple and just connect on that, emotional, spiritual level. It lights me up. And that's what direction we're working in right now. We are, fostering that emotional, spiritual connection because I need it now more than ever. And, I mentioned this at the beginning of the episode, but this last seizure, the one last week, has had a very different impact on me than any of the ones I've had in the past, especially and pretty much mostly on that mental, emotional, and spiritual level. And this last one definitely took a bit of my spirit and my soul with it. And I'm going to try to keep it together because I told myself I could get through it. I wasn't going to cry, my voice wasn't going to shake. So if you hear me pausing, you guys know the deal. So what I realized could be the reason why, and I don't even know if it's could be the reason why, because I know it's the reason why, is after every seizure, I feel like a different person. And I feel like in some ways, there are aspects of me that I can't get back. And every time it steals a piece of my light, from me. And this last one, it took a chunk. It took a very, very, very big chunk out of my heart and soul because I had been doing so good. And I almost feel like in a way, I fucked it all up. And my spirituality and connection to myself is very important to me. It's one of the most important things in my life. And I feel like a piece of it, was kind of taken away. And I don't know if that's just because this is the mindset I'm in and I'm feeling these feelings and I'm not quite able to, tap into my optimism. But I feel like I'm just kind of this hurt little girl right now that needs, some grace, and I need to be gentle with myself and really take care of myself. So we're going to get to the other side of this feeling. I know that I will be back in alignment and be connected, to myself. I've got to take care of myself. And lucky for me, I have a few things that I already do to take care of myself, this week and moving forward. So thank you so much for joining me during this episode. It was an absolute pleasure. I was not expecting to cry. So I've got some emotions that are asking to be felt that I need to take some time to dive into and, show some love on. So I hope you have a wonderful week and you implement some amazing self-care rituals that will just make you feel, oh so good. So I wish you, like I just said, a wonderful week, and I will see you next time. Thank you so much for joining me today. I hope this episode spoke to you, and I can't wait to continue to share so much more. If you're feeling called, please subscribe and leave a review so together we can reach even more women who deserve to live their best life. And you can follow me on social at The Bitch in My Brain as I share my journey and life in real time. I can't wait to see you bitches next week. Take care.